October 12th, City Council be called to order. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item on the agenda will be approval of the minutes from the September the 28th meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from September 28th, 2020. Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of September 28th meeting. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Malat,
Yes.
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Cahart.
Yes.
Next item will be statement of the bills paid in the amount of $450,537.01.
Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the statement of bills for $450,537.01.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the statement of the bills paid. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Malat,
Yes.
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Cahart.
Yes.
We found the general fund bills this time for
Okay, the next item on the agenda will be request for comments from the public, and it doesn't look like anybody's here to do that, so we will move on to the next item on the agenda. Your presentation by Justin Baker and Alco Development related to the Town Center redevelopment project.
Let's see. That's already on, right? Okay, we're good to go here?
Should be.
Okay. I'll just briefly introduce Dustin Baker. I won't call him Dusty. I keep doing that because we got another Dustin. I call him Dustin is a partner with Alco Development. Just briefly, he kind of approached us about the potential to look at the private development portion of the Town Center project. And so I thought maybe the best thing would be to have Dustin come and tell you a little bit about his company. We've talked to a number of quote developers. Most of those are larger, and this isn't in their wheelhouse, or it's too small, or whatever. From what I've briefly learned from Dustin and his group, this is probably more their wheelhouse. So I thought the best thing to do was to let him kind of present their firm, and we can have any discussion. So with that, Dustin, and you have control, you can move your PowerPoint back and forth. So.
Well, thank you, council members, for the time today. I really appreciate it. What I planned on doing tonight is just tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about Alco, some of the past projects that we've done, some of the most recent projects that we're currently working on, and why we're interested in this project in particular. Again, my name is Dustin Baker. I grew up in DeSoto, Kansas. So I'm from this area. I currently live in Baldwin City, Kansas, and I sit on the Planning Commission down in Baldwin City. My background, I graduated from K-State. I was a banker for almost 10 years, commercial real estate lender. And then after I left the banking world in the crash of '08, it just wasn't any fun anymore. I became a CFO of a small company in Lawrence, Kansas, and then was there for 3 years. It was a landscape supply business. And then I transferred over to R.D. Johnson Excavating, based out of Lawrence, Kansas. Roger Johnson was the sole owner of R.D. Johnson Excavating, and he and I started doing real estate projects together before we started Alco. Alco was formed in 2016. It's comprised of myself, Roger Johnson, and his son, Jeremiah Johnson. We're the three partners. Sorry, I'm not real great at using technology. So, let me back up a little bit. Just as a side note, my father-in-law owned the small jewelry store down in Muncie for many years.
I'm going to interrupt you. You're kidding.
Bruce
I knew
Johnson.
I knew Ralph Johnson.
Yep.
Wait, look, anyway, thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so my wife is Dana, Dana Baker, Dana Johnson. Dana was Ralph's granddaughter, and she worked down at the store.
Yeah.
Was in a robbery down at the store. That's my background. My grandpa worked at Lone Star cement plant for all of his career. Retired from Lone Star. So that's why I'm interested in this project. I feel connected to it. But that's just a side note. So a little bit about, I've told you about myself. Tell you about Roger Johnson. He founded R.D. Johnson Excavating. Grew it from one person excavating company himself into when he sold it in 2016 to Ham companies, and at that time we had 100 employees. We were doing about 35 million in revenue. And his son Jeremiah, I call him a good kid. He's not a kid. He's 30 years old, but so he's learning the business, and he works alongside us. And then we have Stacy Leslie. She's our office manager. Some of the most recent projects, and the reason I wanted to show you some of these projects, kind of shows the breadth of. I mean, again, we're a small company. It's just 3 of us, but we have done some decent-sized projects. So Panda Pediatric, it's located in Lawrence, Kansas. Used to be the old Eagles Lodge. The Eagles Lodge owned it for since the 1960s. They sold it to us. This is kind of a before picture of what it looked like. It's 22,000 square feet. And so when we bought it, we completely remodeled it and made it the new home of Panda Pediatric. So we took the existing building, we left the walls, we left the foundation, put a new roof, and completely gutted the inside of it, and that's kind of what it looked like. And that was about a $4 million project. Another one that we did just recently, we took an old Montana Mike's Steakhouse, 6,000 square feet. Did the same thing. We kept the outer walls, put a new roof on, and it's now the new home of Lawrence Eye Care. It's about a $2 million project, and we still own both of those projects. We lease it to them on a long-term lease. Another one that we just recently finished is this was a ground-up construction located in Eudora. We requested a 75% tax abatement through the IRB process on this. We built it ground up. It sits on about 3 acres. It was 43,000 square feet, 55 units. 20 of those are memory care. The other 35 are assisted living. And that was about an $8.5 million project. We currently still own it. We leased it back to an operator. So we don't do any of the operations. We just own the facility. And that's another picture. We also, so those were some of the ground up or conversion projects. We also do single family residential developments. This is a house in one of them. This is located in Fairfield Farms. It's on the east side of Lawrence. We did phase 1 was 43 lots. We started that basically in 2017, completed the lots in 18 and sold out. So we started phase 2. We just completed and started selling lots in there. We have 63 lots. We've sold 45.
What's that price point?
So the price point of the house, the price point of the lots in Fairfield are, in phase 1, they were $45,000, in phase 2, they're $55,000.
And then the house?
And then the houses are in the range of about started out in phase one, they started out at like 230 to 245, and now they're up to about 265 to 285. 1,500 square feet, 3-car garage.
Who builds mainly, I mean, the houses, who's building it?
So there's mostly, so there's Mike Derpay Construction. He's out of St. Mary's, Kansas. He's a big builder in there. And then we have some local guys that are building 1 or 2 houses a year. Mike's been building 15 to 20 houses in that subdivision. So he's probably the main guy. And then we just, like I said, have builders that just will buy 1 or 2 lots at a time and build. Some of the current projects that I'm working on, 2 of them are located in Baser. There was some property along, if you're familiar with Baser, along 2440, right there at where the Casey's is, or the Orschlands, that was a grocery store. That property had been for sale for quite a while, it was owned by a bank. We bought all the commercial ground in there, so we currently own the ground. And I'm trying to, I'm going through the entitlement process right now to do a 108-unit apartment complex and a 62-unit assisted living facility. And then we'll still have some commercial ground left. I have an LOI for a grocery store in Baser too, but I didn't want to put it up there because I just have a letter of intent. We don't really have a deal yet. And then the Heartland Community Health Clinic. That one, I'm actually, we are not the owner of that facility. We're just doing it for another company that's located in Lawrence. They own the building because we did some recent remodels, the Panda Pediatric and the Lawrence Eye Care projects. The company hired us to just be the developer for them on that project. So,
On your 108, your proposed 108, what's your rent rate?
So they're all one and 2 bedroom units.
Any garage?
No garages. We're gonna have carports.
Okay.
The site just didn't allow for garages. In the one bedroom, I did a market study from Novogradic, and so I'm basing it on the market study. They said a 1 bedroom should rent for in between $850 and $950 a month, and the 2 bedroom is about 1,100 square feet, and they said I should be able to get about $1,100 a month.
And will you still own those, and those will be like what, on ground leases?
No, we'll go ahead and own them outright and hire a management company to operate them. Yep. So I was talking to Mike. I really like the idea of the town center project, having walkability and really transforming this area with maybe some retail component, maybe some office. I don't know yet until we order them. Until we get a market study that kind of tell me what really would work down here. But I would love to what I'm here to tell you is I and my partners in Alco are really good partners on projects like this. We want to listen to your needs. You know your community. We're not big corporate developers. We're hands-on. If we do this, we're going to be partners.
So how did a Lawrence-based company come to find us? You're based in Lawrence, is that right?
I'm based in Lawrence.
Right. How
Yeah.
did you hear about Town Center and Edwardsville?
Well, I know Dave here.
Okay.
I grew up in DeSoto. I've done some projects in DeSoto. Dave was telling me a little bit about it. I know Mike, I mean, not real well, but we knew each other. And so when I was talking to Dave about it, it just sounded like a great fit for us.
So as Dustin said, he was a banker in DeSoto. I think that was the one we were trying to do, the special benefit district
With the road,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, it'd been a long, it was 15 years ago
Yeah,
or so,
yeah.
so it was kind of like, I had to go back and do a little memory lane.
That was back in my banking days.
Yeah, and so I served as the interim city manager there, when I first moved to Kansas in 04, 05 timeframe, so that was part of the connection, so. You know, I'll just add, kind of that last slide, maybe we can go back to it just for a second. You know, you've seen this before, there's nothing new about that, it's just kind of the overall site plan that was put together through the process we went through here over the last couple of years. The buildings show 1, 2, 3 bedrooms. We don't know that was kind of the just generic plan. But the concept was each of those 4 buildings has about a 9,000 square foot foundation plan, and then there's 3 stories, and was flexible enough that kind of the original concept was the second and third stories would be apartments. On the first story, about half the space facing the street would be commercial, and the back half would be residential. But we always knew that it could be all commercial on the first floor. You could have 2 of those buildings that might be all apartments, right? It's kind of a need basis of what is the market saying that's needed. We've had some very general studies, like when we did the 4th Street, that said we needed around 60 units, 60 housing units, right? They don't really define it down, and so that's kind of where this concept came. This is kind of what we showed to Dustin and said, this is the very general concept at this point. Does it interest you? Is it something you even want to come talk about? If not, okay. Like I said, we've spoken to the lane force and the blocks and all those people. If this was if we were talking about hundreds of thousands of square feet, Corbin Park or something, they have a lot of interest. It just, that's not their world. So quite honestly, I didn't know that Dustin had gone into doing this kind of work until.
How do you two see us proceeding from this point? I assume this is just a feeler to see if the council is.
Yeah, I think number one is just to get some feedback. I mean, really the thing, as far as a step process, the thing that kind of out there that we've known all along and was part of our overall plan was, we really need to find out if this plan, this concept is real. And you do that through a housing study. And so, multifamily housing study.
Oh,
So-
a housing study, but not a commercial, or?
Well, I don't know, you might
How
have
do
to
you
define
define,
how.
if you can't define exactly how many units
Right.
for living, and,
Yeah.
or how many units are for commercial use,
Yeah, I think part of the housing study, I mean, if the housing study came back and said you needed 90 units, you might change up your mix of housing and
Okay.
commercial. If it came back at 64, then you might put more commercial space there. I mean, we know we have a couple of existing tenants that we have here that have expressed interest in having space and more space.
Yeah.
So, but really getting down to this housing study, and I'll tell you that we talked about this a little bit, just to throw it out there, was those studies are around $7,000 or $8,000. Right? So they're not a lot of money. And I told Dustin, I think, and I'm just basing this off of past, that if this is something that they're interested in, we want to see a little skin in the game. And some cities, they go out and pay for these studies. themselves, other times developers pay for them, it's a little bit of market driven. We know this site's challenging, I mean, in the sense if we were doing this on, Fourth to K-32, it'd be a whole different project. So I told him, I think that's what we would like to see. And again, without having much discussion, because it's been pretty quick, that I think in a case like this, the city might share that cost. I think there are benefits to us and there are benefits to the developer potentially. So that's kind of what we just talked about, but no decision's been made, just kind of thrown it out.
Is that housing study Edwardsville wide, or is it area specific?
I think they're more area specific.
Because I think if we were
can
going to-
expand it.
I think that if we were to, because probably for a very small amount more, we can do Edwardsville citywide versus
Yeah,
just a small and be narrow, and then if we end up needing to do one down the road,
right.
have to do another.
We did look at some pricing, it's been a while back, on doing a citywide one. And if I recall right, and I'm going off the top of my head, I think we're about 12 to 15,000 roughly to do a citywide one, somewhere in that range. We would just have to, we would get proposals from companies, right? And we would fund something like that through our economic development fund.
So let me ask you this, at that price point, is the developer, you guys, interested in splitting that cost? If there was the potential opportunity for maybe some single-family housing in the future. It just, throwing it out there. It's something to talk about.
Yeah,
At least
for
we're
sure.
gonna talk about it.
And so I guess I'll reiterate, we feel like we're good partners. If it makes sense for the community and it makes sense for this project, I don't see why we wouldn't participate in the cost.
So you could potentially see you participating in a citywide one that the council members.
Yeah, as long as, I think as long as we dictate to, and we can kind of specify to, we use Novograd, they're a nationwide company. I think what we could probably do is say, okay, and have an engagement letter where, yes, it's community-wide, but then they also drill down into this site specific.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, because I seeing how your interest is more in this site here, but if you would participate in the overall project, but have two facets to that study,
Yeah,
yours here in town center and the citywide one, yeah.
right.
Well, maybe, hopefully, if one project goes well, and we know we need a single family project too, right?
Yeah.
When was the last time we did a single family subdivision?
That's why I added that in there.
20 plus, it's been over 20 years. How many lots do we have available? 2. That's what we have available, 2 or 3, a single family
Right.
subdivision, right? We have one subdivision that has 2, 3 lots, I'm not sure what it's at. That's what we have. And
Right.
I can say it
We have
does
some
impact
access
us.
too.
Well, I think there's also a market for an assisted living facility in this area as well.
In this area, you mean down here, or in
In
Edwardsville?
Edwardsville.
Gotcha.
I got a question. How does most of what you showed as an example, to me, was homes, houses, and so forth, or assisted living? How would the homes or townhouse concept work with the retail in the same vicinity? Is that a viable combination to make together? If I'm thinking about this and something, you understand?
Yeah, so how do I anticipate this being kind of a viable project?
Yeah,
With
that's how it
the
would work.
retail component?
Yeah, when you've got storefront, I'm gonna say storefronts, but storefronts and houses.
Yeah.
Is that gonna work together?
Yeah, we haven't particularly done that per se with the retail component underneath and the multifamily above, but it's a concept that works really well in other jurisdictions. Even the little downtown square of Baldwin has some retail, old, in their old buildings, but they have retail on the bottom and apartments above, all down the center of the downtown area. So it's not a new concept, and I think it would work well. It just, we would have to be really flexible on the design and be able to be market focused. And what I say by that is, there might be somebody that we can't go and just try to think we're gonna lease 4,500 square feet to 1/10. We need to be able to, mix and match and be really flexible and.
So there gotta be some kind of a lure involved in it that would lure people here
Right.
to
Yeah.
shop or live.
Well, and that's what I was talking to Mike about. I mean, and he's gonna kill me, and I said, well, a community pool, and Mike was like, I don't know.
Spray park, yes, pool, I don't know.
But the park, and the trails, and you're gonna have to sell that and talk up the unique features of being right by the river, and you have the trail and the park area that Mike was talking about. I mean, you have some good features here. Highway access. I mean, there's some really good features here that we can sell, and I think it would be successful. We just have to do it in partner.
So Dustin, how would that work? Say, just for example, development at the town center, would that be something you build, you own, or we own? How would that work? Just negotiation between both of us, or how?
Yeah, I think, it would be some give and take. We'd set up a development agreement, in
No, it's
theory.
a cart before the horse, but I just.
Yeah, but in theory, in theory, I think we would buy the pad sites from the city. The pad sites meaning where the actual building is located. And then we would build them, we would own them.
In the purple green building.
In the purple, right.
You would own that property, pad sites,
Right.
and develop, okay.
Right, and then, the city would provide pretty much everything else in the green and the parking lot feature. We would enter into some sort of maintenance agreement, like think of it as a homeowners association, but just for business, a business condo association, where my apartment buildings would share in the cost of mowing, parking lot that sort of thing for future maintenance and repair.
I think one of the main concerns regarding that was if we're gonna have a community center it's gonna look like it's part of this development,
Yeah.
is that we wanna have control over what the property looks like.
You bet.
We certainly don't want a fire station on one end or whatever that is down there, which I would like to hear your ideas on that. If you would like taking that on as part of the project, turning that into a commercial property. And so that's the way I understand this, is that we would have control over the visual of the property, so that we don't have this abandoned, or not abandoned, but a poorly cared for property in the middle, and trying to have a nice city property on one or both ends.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think there's gonna have to be a mechanism where you have a voting interest and I have a voting interest, and all the contracts that go along with maintenance and repairs, and that voting interest could be 5149. I mean, I'm just throwing out stuff, but it would have to share in the cost too, right? I mean, there'd be along with voting rights would be cost sharing.
No, I completely agree.
Yeah.
And also these buildings, obviously, the purple buildings are playing right over top of where we're sitting. And so, we've talked in the past a little bit about a phase-in into our city hall instead of making a one lump sum investment, is getting the fire station, maybe the police in that, as a start in phase 1 or phase 1 and 1.5.
Yeah.
But that leaves our city hall kind of hanging out there. Is there any thought about how maybe we could transition into one of these buildings as a tenant for a period of time and until we decide what we want to do, or until we borrow or raise the money for the rest of the project?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the phasing of the projects, we'll have to discuss all those details, because I think obviously there's a need for phasing, but then there's also a need for controlling the cost of the building. You know, if you build, if you contract to build all four at the same time, you're gonna get a lower cost. And so there's gonna have to be some give and take, but sure, yeah. I mean, we're gonna have to work together
Right.
on all that.
I was actually thinking of the phasing more on the public side,
Yeah,
you know, that.
gotcha.
Managing.
I thought you meant phasing everything.
No,
everything.
I could understand all the economy of scale that you'd be dealing with.
Well, and like, I'll give you an example, lumber prices in the last 30 days have went up like 150%. I mean, just controlling all that. I think it'll come back down, but stuff like that, it's a little frustrating.
If you would be approved of this project and we were in agreement, what would the timelines be on like beginning and ending construction and even putting people in them?
Sure. So if we were to approve this, the markets, the market study would have to come. Let's just say that's all taken care of. My design team, it would probably take us, again, I err on the side of conservative. I want to be conservative when I say this. 6 months to design and get through the city process. Site plan will pretty much be done, but we'll still have to design, get the design approved by everybody here. Go through that, and then 12 months to build. So from start to finish, from start of design to up and running, 18 months, 18 to 24. I mean, give or take. It's a long process.
And then what would Mike, what would be the share to cost? He's saying the purple building basically, and the rest of it would basically be for us to do. Would we be responsible for putting the green space in and the streets and parking, or?
Yeah, I think, I mean, again, we're just at such a concept stage, I think,
I agree.
because, you might not need all of that at the same time. I mean, it kind of depends what other things. The two things that I would say at the very front end that we know will have to happen, kind of regardless of anything we do, is some utility relocations. I mean, we have a funky sewer line going through here, which quite honestly is probably the original sewer line put in out of the mobile home park. It's clay tile, and we know we have problems with it. So it probably needs to get upgraded anyways. And the thought is that we would basically run it along what's known as 3rd Street, as you all know, right? So the sewer would come around that way and then connect back by the fire station where it already connects.
About how much is that gonna be?
I mean, we haven't
You
even.
have any idea?
A couple 100,000 probably. I mean, it's not a big I mean, we're not building, I mean, it's a gravity line. I mean, it's relatively, I mean, on expenses, I mean, that would be fairly small. And at some point, and power is kind of funky in there, because we got those old overhead poles. But, I mean, some of that, the power company will make some adjustments. They pay for some of it. They expect whoever does, wants something relocated. But quite honestly, some of that is going to happen almost without some doubt if we're going to do anything in the entire area, whether it's for the park, whether it's for buildings. I mean, they're just in the wrong place for what we're doing and aged. I mean, the power is a little easier. The sewer is easy. Just got to design it, build it.
So here's a concern that I have, that we know that we have a need for housing. We've identified that, and we're having potentially we'll have a study to back that up. What I think that this is doing is moving us into a position that we are going to have to make a decision on rebuilding our city building. Because I mean, that's what it's going to do. Like you just identified it. It's going to move us out of here. And so really what we're needing to be deciding is if we're ready to make that decision to spend $10 to $12 million on a new city hall facility. that's something we need to be thinking about also.
Yeah, I think there may be some phasing in of the city hall might be another possibility too. And I really understand the economy of scale when you're building and so forth, but there's also the reality of available funds and the willingness to go after those funds. Is, you know, we could maybe look into some other ideas on where we could relocate City Hall for a period of, for a year or two, relocate into a temporary situation, whether it's, you know, space down in the industrial park, or just someplace where we could house the city for a period of time that would allow us to take maybe smaller steps, baby steps along the way, or maybe we decide let's just bite, you know, let's just take a big old bite out of the elephant. Whatever we think is appropriate from a financial and a development standpoint. But I think the first thing that's really important is getting that study so we can have something to look at and rationalize with the citizens of the city, say, okay, this is worth moving forward with and having something documented to do that. And I don't think we need action tonight other than just recommendation to say, what would it look like for a cost split, and what's the parameters of the study that we want to participate together in, and then you can bring that back to us and we can juggle that.
What does that study really consist of? I'm not familiar with it.
I probably have to let Dustin speak to that better than me. So.
National, what is that?
Yeah, so they'll look at the demographics, they'll look at competing facilities in the area. They'll look at the not only competing studies or competing properties in the area from an occupancy, from a rental rate standpoint, and then they'll just look at the overall demand, and how they base that is just population growth in your market area, and they'll define our market area. That's why getting the study is so important. They're going to kind of tell us where we're going to be able to draw from, right? And what they consider the competing properties, and the amenities of those competing properties and what that looks like.
The competing, is that the surrounding cities?
what he's doing.
It could be like in Baser, when I got my market study for Baser, they showed there wasn't really any competing properties for the new facility in Baser specific. So the properties that they identified would be competition for me were KCK, you know, up by the village. They also identified a couple of Shawnee properties on K7 that were competing properties. And so they compared what I was going to build. I kind of had to tell them a little bit. And so what I told them was, I gave them the site plan, and I said, this is what I'm looking at, but you tell me what's going to work, right? And then I can look at the financials and go, based on what they told me the property will do, will it fit financially into a pro forma that I can make sense of for what I can build it for, and it all kind of comes together.
My sense is that this has piqued our interest to another point that we've already been through, but I think, Mike, I think you need to bring to the council some kind of chronology of the process of the market study and the cost of the market study, and the agreement between us and Alcove on the sharing of the market study. So they're, like Chuck said, we're not going to make a decision. We didn't plan to make a decision tonight, but I think the input from the council sounds to me like that there is an interest to move forward. But we need a chronology, so to speak, and we need some cost and how we share those costs and things like that.
Because there is a possibility that the study comes back and you say, it's not going to financially work.
Absolutely.
And so, and we need to know it either way.
And this is the only way we're going to find out,
Right.
yeah.
And is that including the other, like, developable parts that are not?
We're just So all we're talking about is private zoning. So the rest of that, I mean, quite honestly, all the rest of that stuff is,
Yeah, I think that's right.
I mean, if this part isn't doable, the rest of it, it completely changes the plan.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
does.
quite honestly, so.
It seems like in our previous conversations with developing town center, it would be more of a community that would invite people for recreation and walking and biking and all of those things, which leads more to the more businesses on the base level. But as far as the apartments, could you speak a little bit to what finish is? Are these gonna be higher end apartments? Are they gonna, like, what kind of housing will that supply for our community?
Yeah, I mean, I anticipate it being market rate apartments, which means not subsidized, right?
No tax credits.
Right, no, it's not gonna be what you qualify as low-income housing and subsidized. So it's gonna be market rate. I envision tile in the bathroom, granite countertops, smart locks, smart lighting, smart thermostats, nice finishes. This kind of goes with washer and dryer in the units provided, fridge provided, stove, microwave, a common area. I even talked about, it depends on what the market study comes back at, but I'm even thinking it'd be cool to have like a rooftop, kind of where you could access the roof and hang out there. Something like that, something unique, something a little bit different than what everybody else is doing. And so rooftop access, and that's what I was talking to Mike, I don't know, I'd love to see like a drone and see how far you could see into the river. You might have to figure out maybe a tree to clear, but that's the type of what I'm envisioning anyway. But the market study will come back and say, you need to do this, you need to be competitive, you need to do X, Y, and Z.
It'll take into account the housing prices in the area and so forth, correct?
Yep. And it'll take into account finishes of, competing product, amenities that they're providing, that sort of thing.
Again, I think this evening was just to touch base on this, that as Dustin came and, I gave him a little bit of the history and said, I think a critical piece of this is having somebody that number one, that's interested, number two, that's willing to be a partner with us, and that means sharing in a lot of ways, right? And seeing, everything I keep hearing is the housing study or a study like that is the critical component. I mean, just to give you an idea, Lenexa paid for a study for town, for their Lenexa towns that are on recent apartments. So, things like the loft and stuff. So, it really is a foundational piece. And again, the hope is, and what we think is that there's a market there. But if there's not, then there's not. You're not gonna create the market. If we know anything, we've all been through, right? You're not going to create a market. You just, right? The market's going to be the driver. If it's price, if it's types of units, if it's just whatever, if there's no interest. Dreams are wonderful, but they have to have a reality. So that's kind of what this is. So we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Mayor, Marcy.
Thank you.
Go
Justin, thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming.
Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda will be here staff review responses for 2021 requests for proposals for solid waste and recycling services.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we just want to provide one more update. We're still not at the point yet where we're bringing any solid decisions to move forward with regarding this RFP process, but we did want to give you some more insight into the solicitation process and then where we are currently at as far as the staff review, and then give you a little bit of timeline of what we think is going to be coming next. So just to recap, we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, 67 total responses in the community survey. Some of the high points of that were 73% responded that they're very satisfied or somewhat satisfied with the current service level. 61% responded that they use curbside recycling every week. About a 50-50 split in when we asked their preference between continuing the citywide cleanup or moving toward the curbside bulky item pickup. But then once we gave them options as far as naming new services that they would like to see added or different changes, curbside bulky item pickup ranked #1 in those services. So we went out for this RFP process. 4 firms responded: Honey Creek Disposal out of Lawrence, KC Disposal from Edwardsville, Republic Services from Kansas City, Kansas, and Waste Management also out of Kansas City. So when we talked about this before, so we structured the RFP in a way to kind of get an a la carte response back so we can kind of pick and choose the service levels that we wanted based on the community feedback that we got from the survey, as well as the feedback that this body gives to us as far as moving forward in good faith in negotiations with the firms that have submitted. So what we asked them to supply was, so the base level of service is weekly trash pickup in 95-gallon container. We asked them for prices for weekly recycling pickup in both a 65-gallon and a 95-gallon. Currently, we do weekly curbside pickup in a 65-gallon container, so a little bit smaller than the main trash container. We asked what the price would be per month per resident at the bi-weekly, moving to a bi-weekly model for recycling pickup in both a 65-gallon and a 95-gallon option. We asked for costs related to monthly tree and yard waste removal, in case that emerged as something that residents were interested in. We asked about the bulky item pickup curbside at different levels of frequency, both monthly and quarterly. We asked for unit costs for 40-yard containers because we do intend on continuing the citywide cleanup going forward, even if we have some curbside component, because it's a good event and it does a lot for our stormwater pollution mitigation strategies. It does a lot for our illegal dumping. So that's if nothing else, if we had no curbside bulky item pickup, the very best base expectation is that we will continue the citywide cleanup going forward. Obviously, collection of city facilities at City Hall and the City Park, and then unit pricing for commercial solid waste customers. If you remember, about 2 years ago, we kind of went through all the hoops necessary if we wanted to enact a organized collection service for commercial customers. So if that's a direction that we feel is going to be benefit to rates as a whole, we'll bring that back to the body, or if there's thoughts one way or the other at this point as far as how to proceed, then we've at least got that information from them. And there's some variability built in there, and we'll be talking that out with some of the firms later on this week. We also asked that in all of these options that they provide a model or a pricing structure, I should say, based on 1,100 addresses, which is approximately what we've got now, and then 1,600 addresses, which is what we've got now, and then the approximate number of addresses that would be added if the mobile home park were to be included in our service contract. We continue to have good conversations with the mobile home park. I'm going to be having a phone call later this week with their regional person. They just named a new I'm not sure her exact title, but essentially the manager of the local park. So she's going to be included in those conversations going forward as well. So by the time we come back to the council after we complete our review, we'll know one way or the other on if they're going to be one being included or not. So based on the preliminary review, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds as far as individual responses, but I did want to give you a range of some of what the responses that we were looking at. So if we just continued with the exact same service level right now, so weekly curbside recycling and weekly curbside trash recovery, the only change being that I upgraded the 65-gallon container, which we currently have, to 95-gallon container, because by and large, there was one firm where there was a price difference, but by and large, they were the same cost one way or the other. So that kind of normalized it for review purposes. But we're looking at between a 3.5% increase or all the way up to a 45% increase. So in dollar terms, that's about a 28 cents per month per resident, or per address per month, or $6.81 per address per month. And I should clarify, those are the costs per address per month charged to the city. So right now, we're charging about a little bit over $15 per address to the city, and there's additional costs on that that help cover our utility billing, the mailing that goes out, the cost for the citywide cleanup, and the different events that are, and costs that come out of that solid waste fund. So those increases are on the per address charged to the city, not necessarily the final rate charged to the resident. When we asked to look at a transition to bi-weekly recycling pickup, the response we got back ranged from no change, essentially a flat. It would be, pretty less than a 0.001 change in the per address rate, and then up to a 63% increase on the high firm that came back in that area. So again, there's a lot of, we'll be having discussions with some firms this week to kind of get some more details on that, but there was a lot of variability built into the responses we got back based on a number of factors that we'll get into that when we have further conversations with them.
What like the contract are we looking at?
5 years.
And on the last one, just to make sure I'm reading it right, for them to pick up the recycling half as often would be a 63% increase in the rate?
So there was one firm that did not have, the firms did not have a uniform as far as all of them could offer weekly curbside, or all of them could offer bi-weekly curbside. So that's why, so one of the high firm for the bi-weekly pickup did not have an option for weekly pickup. So that's why there's that, at first glance, it doesn't make sense that it would be a larger percent increase for half as much, but because that particular firm did not submit a price for weekly pickup, that was their all-in for this bi-weekly pickup.
That makes sense, thank you.
Some more items for review. If we had add some kind of curbside bulky item pickup, if we do it at a monthly frequency, it would range from an additional 73 cents per address up to $5 in additional charges per address per month, and that changes to, or goes down a little bit on the high end to $2. We're going to move to a quarterly item pickup, bulky item pickup, and again that'd be 1 to 2 large furniture, shelving. We're not talking about things like construction materials or things like that. These are furniture, mattresses, shelving, things like that. When we looked at monthly tree limb pickup, it ranged from an additional $1 up to a little bit more than $3 in additional charges. And I should note too, some of the firms included some of these different services as all in, so they didn't itemize. If some of the firms would include curbside pickup of bulky items at some frequency, and tree limb service, and recycling and trash all in one unified cost, and didn't break it down, and didn't itemize each of the costs. So, but generally, these are the ranges that we're talking about when we look at the different options. So the next steps is, so we're going to be having some continued discussion this week. We've set up some calls and some meetings with some of the select firms based on these preliminary reviews. The follow-up discussions are largely going to be driven by just the base cost for residents. That's kind of the first area that we're looking at, trying to have some level of cost control as we move forward. We anticipated up to a 6% increase in our solid waste costs, our contracted costs in the 2021 budget from 2020. So that's kind of the parameters that we set for ourselves. So we know the goalposts that we're working within. We're also going to be taking a look at and reviewing the commercial rate structure that was provided based on the unit costs that the firms gave us, and how that may or may not affect residential rates. So we asked specifically in the RFP process if inclusion of the commercial rate structure would have any effects on residential rates. By and large, what they indicated was that no, if having that in or out wouldn't have an effect on residential rates. But depending on how we, the city, want to structure our rate structure, both on the residential side and the commercial side, that's going to shake out as we enter into contract negotiations and get final costs kind of situated. And then further consideration of additional services, again, based on this body's feedback and the feedback we got from the community survey. So at this point, we are kind of at a discussion point to be had tonight about generally what's the city council's feel for what they want to see at our next contract, what are the service levels that they're willing to, take a look at. If it's all about cost and just replicating the service that by and large is pretty popular, then we can give you the low cost, bidder pretty quickly. But if there's other factors and service levels that need to be considered as we continue to have these discussions, then we need to know now so we can properly frame those conversations that we're having with those firms. So, and again, other variable items are going to pop up, commercial rate structure, different service options and the like. So, again, another update on where we're at. We'll either bring you another update at the next council meeting, the last one in October, or ideally we'll be bringing back to you kind of a package based on the feedback that we get on how we think what the best package is and what the best firm is to move forward with. So if you've got questions at this point, I will entertain those.
Is $210,000 what, that says the adopted 2021. If this was a city incurred cost, what would it cost the city if we provided trash service to our residents? What's the cost?
If this, I guess I don't understand.
Us providing the people and
Yes,
trucks and everything.
if we paid for the trash service.
Oh, you're not talking about buying trucks, you're talking about just.
No.
So
I'm
what's
saying
the-
if we.
what's the wholesale
if-
cost?
If we absorb the costs in our budget, what would it cost us?
About $210,000, I mean, no, around that $200,000 mark, just strictly for the contract, and probably a little bit more, but that's strictly for the contracted price. In total, I want to say that budget is around $220,000, and again, that's utility billing costs, that's costs for the 40-yard container rentals. There's some website fees that go into that too, general admin fees, so I can look that up and just confirm what our final 2021 approved budget was and what our 2020, looking back with that whole budget, the whole solid waste fund.
What we're looking at is our cost, so the cost of the city franchise.
We're paying about $8,000 a month right now, aren't we?
And then it's about a little bit closer, about 15,000, between 15 and 16,000.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it was my bad as well.
Yeah, 15.
15,000.
Zach, do they all provide the containers, the
Yes,
trash and recycling containers?
All provide their own containers, correct.
With lids?
Mhm.
I think the other thing too that we've had some questions about is could people have additional cans? What would be the charge or the procedure to have additional cans?
That's feedback that we've heard as well, and that's, as we continue to have those discussions.
Large
that's gonna be
family, that
raised,
type of
right.
thing.
Mhm.
And can we find out, and this might be a little too into the weeds, but if we're talking about potentially adding a bulky item on a quarterly or monthly basis, could we find out how much would it cost if they were to call, a citizen were to call the company and say, hey, can you pick up this couch, can you pick up this refrigerator? So we're not necessarily adding it to everyone across the board, if it might be not all that expensive.
So what you're saying is just get what the call-out cost would be if that wasn't a contractual part of the service, but.
Making it a la carte.
Right, so.
And that's available now.
Right, yeah. I don't know off the top of my head what the waste management charge is, but that is available right now, so I would assume.
So what you're saying basically is if the bulky item pickup is included in what you're doing here, me that doesn't ever have anything bulky is gonna have to pay for it regardless, right? Okay, that's good.
So
That was really my question.
So I think the two things that, and I'll probably say three, but, from the survey, from what we received, recycling is an important service. We know it's going through changes. We know the plastic industry, there was a story today about that. We recycle on plastics about 10% of all plastics that are generated, plastics generated in the world, we recycle about 10% of it. But there's a strong component of support for recycling. There was when we added it, and it continues to be. So the one is there any benefit of trying to, so to speak, reduce that and go to every other week? It doesn't appear that it's going to save any significant dollars, and quite honestly, I think it creates a hassle because you have to remember which week you're on for the recycling. And So, I mean, we asked that question because if it was some, you know, if it was a $2 or $3 or $4 a month difference, well, people may be willing to say, okay, I can remember on the second and fourth pickup of the month, I put my recycling out, and the first and third I don't. But it doesn't appear that there's a big dollar change there. The bulky at the curb seemed to be something that was popular. You know, and so, yeah, do you spread that cost across a group and there's only a few people taking it, which has its pluses because everybody gets cheaper. The downside of it is, you know, really garbage is a volume-based business, right? I mean, if you want to have 4 cans, get 4 cans. You know, if I only want to have 1 can because I only use it, you know, I only fill up 1 can, why should I pay the same amount of money as you do for 4 cans, right? Which is quite honestly what the problem was, you know, in a lot of services. It used to be just free-for-all, so everything out there you want, and hope somebody comes and get it, and then it got to the point where garbage companies, that's just, you know, it's not a dual service. So I think people like curbside bulky. You know, the question is there enough support for everybody to pay for it?
I'm not in favor of it.
And that's fine. I mean, we asked.
I mean, there's
these questions-
locations
Right.
that have higher turnover
Right.
where a large pickup with bulky
Absolutely.
items, they're gonna, you
Might
can
have
see
some
where
use
they
it a
would
lot,
have
some never
it,
use it at all. I mean, and understand that, let's just say we want to do a citywide bulky pickup, right? There's communities around that do that. They have a name for it, and they say, we're going to do this part of the town, and this part of the town, this part of the town, and this part of the town. We can still do that. We can have an annual curbside bulky pickup. We just would have to, we would work with whoever our contractor, or contractors. I think one thing we need to think about here is, you could have a residential separate from a commercial or all one. I mean, the benefit you would think would be one, but you might order roll-offs from company A and have all your residential services complete. I mean, there's nothing that prevents that. So, you know, again, recycling, does it make any sense to go to bi-weekly from weekly? From the numbers, it doesn't seem there's a reason for it.
Can we add glass and styrofoam for that?
You're not gonna, I mean, you're not gonna get glass. I don't know about styrofoam. I mean, I think it depends on the thing. Glass, the reason they don't put glass in is because of the hazards that it creates when you mix, because everything's co-mingled. So nobody does co-mingled glass. You're just not gonna find anybody that can take
Take
it.
it up to the gas glass
Yeah.
receptacle at Central Bank. on
Now, we tried to get, we've tried to get, maybe we still do, purple, what's that called, purple, purple or ripple glass to have them come put a container. We weren't successful when we asked before, and there's challenges with that, because they get bottles broken.
You get couches in there too.
And then I think the other question is how much do we want to look at a commercial rates? And I want to kind of make the two ends of the arguments, right? And I know that we have to people in the county. So you can say, let the free market decide it, right? And it does. And the rates are all over the board from what we asked for. But I can tell you that there's absolutely no doubt that if you want to adjust the commercial rates, you can impact the residential rates. Because it's a volume-based business, right? I mean, garbage is just a trucking company based on volume. I make more profits on commercial than I do in residential. And I've been in a city where we actually went from private to public. So the city bought the trucks, we did all the stuff, right? So we went through that change, and it was a very successful change. But we weren't in an urban area. I mean, if you're the size of Olathe, they can afford to have their own fleet and everything the size of us. I mean, you'd have to buy 2 to 3 trucks and have 2 to 3 drivers and backups. There's no way it fits loud. But there is that issue of, do you have discussions about commercial rates? And we're talking about front loads, right? That's what we're talking about. And do you use that to offset some of your residential rates?
Zach, didn't you say that they didn't really tell us it would make any difference financially?
And with the RP document kind of calls that question out specifically and asks, is the rate structure that they are proposing in their submittal does the inclusion of residential rates, or excuse me, inclusion of the commercial rates have any effect on the residential rates? And pretty much across the board, it was no. There was one firm that it would make a small difference, but that is from what they submitted. So if in our review and contract negotiations, it was determined, that, essentially what they gave us was, here's what we would charge, but if we pay them more on the commercial, or excuse me, on the, charge a higher rate on the commercial side, then we don't have to charge that higher rate on the residential side. So what we asked is what they submitted, did their structure that they proposed as part of the RFP process, did commercial have an effect on residential rates? And by and large, the answer was no. But that doesn't mean that the final form of the contract, that needs to bear out that way.
And I think part of the reason they said that was because there wasn't enough absolute. I mean, if you said you absolutely gonna get residential and commercial, their answer would probably be a little bit different. When you said, if we add commercial, but it had to protect the residential, because residential's that's the base level of service we're looking at. And quite honestly, that's the highest cost part of garbage collection. As I said before, I gotta make lots of stops to pick up, 95 gallon, where I go to one place and pick up 6 yards.
I think 3 or 4 or 5 years ago when we had this discussion, the discussion was really, do we load the cost into the commercial side so that we can subsidize the residential side is what we discussed. And that was a lively discussion.
Yes, and I think that's summarized. That is what you're doing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Are you going to use, the commercial side to supplement the cost of the residential side? Is it done? It's done lots of places, and other places it's not done at all.
Do our commercial businesses handle their own right now?
Yes.
I
And I'm not saying one's right or wrong. It's the discussion. That is the fact of the matter.
really like the idea of saving our folks money any way we can. The trick with that is when you're looking at our commercial properties, it's hard enough to get businesses to move in with the taxes they're already paying, fees they're already paying, and what they have to deal with the county. I don't know if we want another hurdle to save maybe a little tiny bit, if it wouldn't really make that much of a difference.
And we're in a town where roughly half of the tax base is being paid by those people already. And so it's unusual in that situation, and that it's always been my position that we need to be a business-friendly community. And so,
Now, there is another part to that discussion, and it's this. Do you want to have organized collection? And understand what that says is, do you want one provider providing the service? I realize, which for the most part is what you have today, but not 100%. Of course, the benefits of that is fewer trucks driving down your street going to the same places, right? That's why you franchise garbage. You want to have 5 trucks going through your neighborhood. Quite honestly, it costs more to the homeowner. Unless they have an HOA. If you have an HOA or a large group
Are we
of
talking about
homeowners.
residential or commercial?
No, I'm just saying, I'm talking about commercial, but so do you want to do the same thing in the sense, do you want to limit the number of garbage trucks going down your streets picking up commercial garbage? If you do, even if you don't want to adjust the rates, you can still do an organized collection, say, this company provides the best rates, they're effectively set by the city in that sense, and you get the benefit, whoever company, to provide commercial garbage here, and here's what you have to do in response, just like we do residential.
and the businesses don't have any other option.
That's true, that's the downside of it, right?
I think even on that, our streets in the industrial park deal with semi-trucks on a regular basis, and so I don't know if it would really make that much of a difference if the trash truck was driving down the road. I like the idea as the business owner being able to choose what business I support and who actually pay my bills, whatever.
And that's fine.
That's exactly where I was gonna go. Would you know if a gravel truck went 2 extra trips down Wood End? No. So you're not gonna know if a trash truck goes 2 extra trips. So, yeah, I don't like that either. Are there residents that have, no pickup at all?
No.
No.
I mean, there's some residences that have a commercial, an additional commercial account for pickup, but there's no residents in Edwardsville that just can opt out of.
So how come, if you do not use the trash service, how come you can opt out of it?
Well, it gets down to rates. They're gonna go up. I mean,
I mean-
fundamentally, I mean, if you tell me.
And I'm gonna use
In
myself
a house.
as an example.
Yeah.
I have a dumpster that gets picked up
Right,
every week.
right.
I have never put a bag of trash out at my driveway ever, ever
And you're
once.
not charged a residential rate.
Well, that's what I just asked.
No, if somebody has a commercial, you
have
have a commercial
yeah, you have a
account.
commercial account. And there are addresses that have commercial accounts, but say
Well,
somebody
yes,
on.
I don't, you know what, I'll follow up and find that out.
Oh, you do.
Hopefully.
If you have a front load, if you have,
Hopefully,
you have a front load container, right?
Yeah,
They pick it up, that's a commercial account.
But an address, say on,
And you pay it directly to that company.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
right,
Yeah,
right.
I,
Your commercial
I know
account.
that.
You're not being charged by the city.
I'm gonna find out.
Well, you owe us a bunch of money.
Well, and maybe it's the opposite.
I think it's the
It's the opposite.
I think, I
Just
do
the opposite.
remember,
We had that problem way back when.
With me?
We got some, yeah.
well, it wasn't a problem, it was confused, like, why is this, it was,
Yeah, it wasn't.
there was an issue with pickup associated with that address, and we looked in, and when we asked Waste Management about the address, they said, well, this is not on our, it's not on our address list for Edwardsville. I said, what do you mean? And
So
then
why
we-
did I get, why do I have the trash bins?
Probably because they were provided.
That's when it came up. You got the trash.
Like,
bin.
we should have the trash.
They're sitting in my garage, brand new, never had a thing in them.
Well, we can have them pick up if that's what you need.
It would
So is
take
that
up less
to
space in my
clarify,
garage.
every household needs to have some sort of trash
Yes,
service,
correct.
Good, good.
whether commercial or residential?
And that's what I meant by
You can't
opting out.
burn your trash, you can't dump it, I mean, like, so every residential address has residential service.
Yeah, take it to my dumpster. That's what I
Now,
said.
we have vacant, so when we say has an account, to have an account, they have to have basically a utility service.
Gotcha.
Now,
Gotcha.
we do have some places that have, it's a farmland, rural, so they have a water-only meter, and it's a rural category that probably doesn't have a trash, that's pretty rare.
Right.
But if there is a residential structure on the lot, they get charged garbage. I mean, and I can tell you, even in my work, my next door neighbor never puts out garbage. For some reason, he takes his garbage and takes it to the bank where he works at, and puts it in the commercial bank. Still pays for garbage. I mean, I don't understand it, but that's what he does. And he says, no, I'm not, okay. You know. But, yeah, everybody that has a residential commercial, has a residential account, with the exception, we have a few that have a commercial container.
Mhm.
I think at one point, because they had the house and the pet place up there, so they had one account, I think they had a commercial account, and so they didn't have, but we've had a couple, but it's a
pretty rare,
handful.
yeah.
Now, one thing that we will, if going with a different company, not that we had really good cooperation with getting trash picked up on 435 before,
Yeah.
but that wouldn't be in the cards.
It's not, it was not a question or part of the contract we had. It's just because not knowing who might be,
Right.
so that is not part of the contract.
Well, again, not like we were having them,
Right.
they were doing a great job picking our trash up on our highway anyway.
So it sounds like that the questions,
They do that very well, turn 1,000 pieces into 25,000.
the summary is, what I'm hearing is more or less maintain the services where we're at. Questions about additional cans. So I know they can provide additional cans and there would be a charge. Just like today, you can buy bag tags today, technically from Waste Management to get tags and put them out there. There is a process. I don't know if we've done a good job of putting that word out there, probably haven't. And the trash companies would prefer it be put into a container, any of them, and they use automated trucks now. it sounds like relative to curbside bulky, in lieu of, and what I would call it organized, in other words, a monthly or quarterly, you want it on a per resident basis, so they would,
Get the call out price for it.
and we could get we can say, okay, what is that rate for the call out plus, you know, is it a $10, $20 call out plus $5 per item up to 5 items? You know, I don't know that, but we can negotiate that. And then, not really moving forward with anything on the organized commercial collection. And what about tree limbs and or yard waste? I mean, my opinion is we don't have that many people, we don't have that many places where people have lawns where they're bagging their grass up. At least that's my perception. I mean, we have some areas and some, but I don't know that, you know, we don't have a large residential base of single-family homes with yards where people bag that.
It's more
What we
tree
do
limbs.
get, what we do get though is tree waste, leaves, raked up in the fall type waste, those kind of things. Is that important?
Well, so,
I mean, they can only put it, I'm not saying they can't put it in the garbage can.
how
They
come
prefer
it
to not.
can't be put into a community pile
Right,
that gets burned?
right, yeah,
I
I
used
don't
to
know.
do that at Wyandotte County Lake.
Yep, Wyandotte County Lake does it all the time.
I don't know
Stack
if
'em
they
up.
still-
They
And is
do.
that for the whole county or is that for Kansas City?
Yeah, it's one again.
I think it's countywide.
I think the logistical question there would just be where, probably, we just need to figure that piece of it out.
Where and manage and
Right.
keep stuff out of it that shouldn't be.
Okay,
in there.
burning stuff up there,
Where?
fire department?
We burned off the trees at the city public works,
Where was that?
at the old range property on
That could be a good place.
98.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know if
We're
there's
looking
something
at
wrong
it.
with
That's
that.
where the river
I think you have to establish, like through KDHE, you would have to establish a tree.
Yeah, we would have to, I'm sure there's some.
You have to license.
Because most cities,
Yeah.
a lot of cities do have one.
Yeah, we've looked at, in the past, we've looked at similar to that kind of mulching, a community mulching practitioner, and didn't move forward for one reason or another, but that just something. we
And
need-
maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's and I know it's manpower and people and you got it, but you have a mulcher that mulches it. And turn it into mulch that we can use. I mean, I don't know if that's possible.
And quite honestly, you could maybe go to, I mean, there are, you know, a company that you
Sure.
can say, I got this, and then they come in with a tub grinder,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
those tub grinders, they'll grind, I don't know if you've ever seen one, you don't want to be near one. I remember DeSoto used to do that, actually. They had a plate, and they brought in a tub grinder. What they found, what ultimately happened is, they were getting so much trash in it that it was a control issue of keeping trash out.
I could probably see that. I mean,
Not to say it can't be,
again, we're at, it's not like we can't do it.
Right.
Because cities are doing
and that could
it
be and that could be separate from this contract, right? I mean, it doesn't, and that's the part I want to make, you know, the fundamental part of this contract is residential garbage and recycling service. That is the foundational piece of this, right? And then, are there other services that you're hearing from people saying, I wish I had this? Again, what we heard from the survey, which, you know, not trying to say it's a statistically whatever survey, because we just put it out there, you know, through our normal thing. Keep recycling, and there was some support for bulky item pickup, which, you know, okay. Most people would probably say, I'd love bulky item pickup, until you say, but it's going to cost you this amount.
But, I mean,
You know, if it's 50 cents a month, you probably have some people say yes. If it's $100 a year, they probably say no.
I mean, to that point though, I mean, it should be made clear that if we, say we just stay with the current format of doing an annual curbside, or excuse me, an annual bulky item pickup, which for all intents and purposes we're going to do, that is built into the cost, into rates as well. So whether you, even if you don't charge people at the door during the citywide cleanup, that's built into your rate. That's part of that difference between what we get charged as a city per address and then what is ultimately billed.
What does Bonner do? Do they pay for recycling?
Bonner is included in the wind-up tubs. Yeah.
Unless they got rid of them.
Not everybody, I think it's voluntary, not everybody has them. Trust me, I go out to my mom's neighborhood every week,
Yeah, it's
probably
curbside, but I believe it's the smaller tubs and
uncovered.
uncovered.
Right, and they're not, there's hardly anybody has them, so I'm pretty sure it's voluntary.
No, it is, and I'm almost certain it is based on from the solid waste committee, the diversion rate, what they call it, is the diverting waste from the landfill into recycling. And we're at 18%, and I want to say KCK collects close to 6 or 7%. Don't quote me, I can do those file numbers, but
Ours is 18% of our customers use it.
18, we have an 18% diversion rate, so they take, the stuff that they take from recycling is would be an 18% increase going to the landfill if it was just thrown out there in the trash.
They've got recycling bins at Public Works in Bonner, cardboard and glass and like there's 3 or 4 different.
And again, I'm fairly certain Bonner's included in the larger Wyandotte County contract, and they're on the front end of reconfiguring that as well. So I'm not sure how it's going to shake out for either of those entities.
So have we explored that option of being on that same?
We had in the past, but there wasn't support
It's kind of expensive.
because it's sort of.
It was so.
was not a sweet deal.
It was not, I mean.
Then let me ask you this, why would Bonner not be opting out of it if it's not a good deal?
Who knows?
I don't know a whole lot about it, but I'm pretty sure KCK's contract's like over a decade long with waste
It was
management.
20 years at one point.
And the open recycle containers are a nightmare. When it's windy, they're all over the streets, all over the ditches, it just blows trash everywhere. The open ones are. That's one thing that I would like to avoid is that any open, that's why I asked the dead lids, if any open containers, because when it's a storm, it's just.
Well, I think you can, I mean, it's somewhat subjective, but if I think, and at least in my opinion, driving through our community since we've gone to the automated with the container versus before that, it's cleaner now than it was then. That's my, because you don't have as much blowing trash out there that was there. That's my perception of what we drive.
Well, the containers generally help keep animals out and things like that. So
That's what I'm
it's
saying. I mean, and we got, those were the complaints we got. Well, my bags got torn up, or the trash is all over the road, who's gonna come pick it up? You know, except, I mean, those were the kind of complaints, I don't think we really get those complaints anymore, so.
My concern, when it really comes down to the bottom line, is people on fixed incomes
Right.
that are gonna generate about a quarter of a can of trash
Right.
a week, and that we don't stack stuff on those people, that I wanna keep their base as low as possible. If somebody wants to have 3 cans, if they wanna pick up bulk every other week, they can pay for it.
Right.
Do you want us to, and I mean, I've seen this in kind of, I don't know around here, but some places will do a senior rate, right? So they'll have a deferred rate, you gotta have some definition for that. But again, it will alter the overall rates. I mean,
You lower one, you're gonna raise the
No,
other.
I understand that completely, but I think it's something that we need to
but we can explore it
at
right
least
now.
have
Might as well.
in our thought process,
Yeah.
because if we want to be friendly to all
Right.
age brackets and income brackets and so forth in our city, I think, and we do have a pretty significant senior citizen population with limited income. So I think it's worth exploring, and there'd be some advantages for those people staying here.
Right. We can win it. I will tell you that in other places where I've been, where they've tried to say, well, you can pick your size of containers and you start down that path. What happens a lot of times is, well, everybody wants the cheaper container, but then they don't have enough room and it's overflowing, and then they get upset because, oh, there's not enough room in my container. You say, okay, well, you can upgrade from the 65 to the 95, but it's another $3 a month. Well, I still have to pay for the extra.
That's not in my thought process, so we
Yeah.
want to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing at this point is that there's not a tremendous appetite for moving forward with the addition of commercial service. Moving forward with, rather than a curbside bulky item cost spread out among the entire population, get unit costs for call-outs related to that, explore the possibility of some kind of discounted senior rate if that's an option, and essentially keep things corralled as far as level of costs, getting them as stable as possible.
The only other feedback I've received isn't so much on the weekly trash, but more phone calls and messages about wanting dumpsters for the citywide cleanup instead of a bulk. A lot of people just don't have bulk items and have been waiting for 6 months or whatever to clean out their garage. But I think, Zach, that you said we might do one in the spring, early
Oh,
in
yeah,
the
so
spring.
what we're gonna do one in the spring, and largely around the same frequency that we did previously. I say we will, fingers crossed that, we've got to go ahead and do that safely, but that's the plan right now, and that's exactly why we got the unit cost for 40 yard containers, so we can plan on that activity and budget for it.
Oh, and like Mike mentioned earlier, if we could, it's always a good opportunity to get some more estimates from other companies in case their containers are
Yeah,
gonna
that's
save
true.
us money.
And to that point, what we're exploring right now, as we asked Waste Management specifically, could you swap out, if transitioning to the curbside bulky item then, specifically, would it be acceptable to, instead of a bulky item, have, 3 to 5 bags equals 1 pouch or something like that? They weren't the biggest fan of that idea for logistical purposes. They don't use the sidearm pickup, the automated pickup, the truck on the curbside item. Not to say they couldn't do it, but it would just add to hourly cost, which just adds to the cost that we pay. Right now, the event is structured to be essentially within the average of what we pay annually for the citywide cleanup and the rental of the dumpsters, the hundred charges and all that. It's essentially within that range as it's conceptualized now, but the more we tweak it and the more hourly work that the workers are doing, then the more we charge back to us, we can drive that cost down. That said, what we are exploring currently is, Mike mentioned the bag tax overages. What we were looking at, like, what if the city just bought them and then just provided them on kind of a call-in basis? So you've been waiting for a while for the citywide cleanup, and you've got, 6 bags that aren't going to be picked up in the curbside pickup. What if the city had those overage stickers and you can come and just pick those up? It's a cost thing.
Maybe the first 2 we provide, and then that's a price. Not, we can't be unlimited.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we're looking
So
at.
it's kind of the angle associated with that and the cost associated with that.
What size bags do this cover?
I don't think they
Like
have.
those contractors,
Yeah,
like these
Contract
big
bags.
black, whatever, like 42 gallons or,
Right.
Yeah, they're 40 to 50 gallons.
yeah.
And I may be living in the past, but are there independent contractors that would be willing to come by and pick up a refrigerator or a dishwasher, that type of thing?
Whenever we have the bulk or the citywide cleanup and there's scrap, we leave it on that Saturday, and then we come back on Monday and that scrap container's half empty. So there are groups out there, I don't know how organized or above board they are, but.
If we could find, because we had that one gentleman that would be here,
Right.
and he just loaded everything up, and we knew it was going to the recycle center and not to Tonganoxie along the highway or something.
Yeah.
You know, so-
98th Street under the
Yeah,
bridge.
there you go. That's a popular place down there. And so, I don't know if that exists, or we could just have a list of,
We can look those.
or people that would come by and pick up a trailer load full of
Yeah, we can
limbs
definitely look
and
at,
for a fee and haul it to the dump.
yeah, at the very least, we can look and see what's out there and try and connect those groups to the people who need it.
Generally, if it's metal, whether it be appliances, they have metal in them, copper in them, right? There's general people that want that. It's the broke down bookcase, the old headboards, nobody takes mattresses. There are some recycling programs for mattresses, and what they do, you have to pay them, and they take the mattress and they rip it apart, right? And they pull the springs out, and recycle the metal, and they take the stuffing and they do something with that, and then basically the outer material they throw away. But they charge $5 to $10 a mattress to do that, because there's not a market. Like everything's got to be a market to sell all that stuff. And right now, the cost to do that is more than the market to sell it.
So I think we've
Okay.
got, yeah, I think we've got some direction to move forward with. Like I said, we've got calls scheduled this week with a couple of the firms. We'll definitely bring back the item at the second meeting in October, hopefully with kind of based on this feedback, and then when we bring the community survey with a package that we would like to get authorization.
I think we'll be able to come back.
If you think of anything between now and then, please let us know.
My last final comment is I'd like to see us at some point get to a position where the city takes over that cost and we don't have to go through this.
Okay, thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, we consider authorizing the city manager enter in contract with CS Carey Inc. for the 2020 Riverview Crossing clearing and grubbing project. I see you're taking this, Dustin.
Yes.
Thank you, Robert.
Good evening. All right. So I have a recommendation here that the city council consider authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with CS Carey Incorporated for the 2020 Riverview Crossroads clearing and grubbing project. This is gonna be part of the larger Riverview Crossroads project. I believe they're gonna be, these are matching funds to go towards that project as well. It consists of an area on Riverview, a small area west of 110th Street, and then, I don't know how far that is, Mike, to the east over there.
The east, we only go about.
The limits of the project, basically, to the east, and then it'll continue all the way down to Speaker Road, going south on 110.
On both sides.
Both
Both
sides.
sides, yeah. We issued requests for proposals for this project, and the bid opening was on October 1st. There were 2 firms that submitted for the project. This project includes 8.1 acres. The bids are summarized in the attachment there. CS Carey submitted a bid for $66,300, and Max Reiki and Brothers submitted a bid for $98,795. The engineering estimate was $50,000 for the removal, but they did note that was as a total of the entire project, so like mobilization stuff was included in the major part of the project, so we went with concrete and asphalt and everything, the mobilization portion of that, I think is $160,000 for the entire project, the mobilization. So you could add some back in for that, that might make that look a little more in line with their estimate. Staff recommends that the city council authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with the low bid, CS Carey, for the 2020 Riverview Crossroads clearing and grubbing project in the amount of $66,300. As a note too, and Mike found this, but CS Carey did the removal on the Kansas Avenue project, and that was what, about 5 years ago, and it came in around, this comes in around 8,100, 8135 or something an acre. I think that's what it is. And that was about 8,000 over there, so we're kind of in the ballpark on that, just for the investment.
What's the time frame on this?
It will start, I can't recall when that was it next Monday, I believe, and they were gonna,
Approved, they're ready to start next Monday, be done.
2 weeks.
So all locates and
Yes.
such are completed and
Yeah.
I didn't hear.
They say they can start on Monday, next Monday.
So I had a homeowner today call me from up there, and they went out and talked to the group that's out there working, and a gentleman told them that they were installing Google Fiber. And I said, I've never heard that at
I
all,
believe that's true.
and I didn't think that it was, but they
Google
were.
Fiber is putting fiber in our grounds, we got a whole other issue. AT&T, so it's probably Verizon Business, which was MCI Metro. we have a franchise agreement with MCI Metro, and they are relocating their facilities underground. So there's basically, AT&T has on pole on what would be the west side of the road, and they will relocate with power company. And on the other side of the road is Verizon Business / MCI, and they're going underground with their facilities. And then AT&T, I think, is on the other side underground.
And they'll relocate with power.
Yeah, I think they're gonna go underground, AT&T, if I'm not mistaken. So everybody that's doing fiber is
because
not,
our power will remain overhead there?
the power will remain overhead.
Oh, you know what, I don't know that.
They're upgrading it to 3-phase, but yes. So a single phase south of Riverview,
Mhm.
and that'll go to 3-phase on the overhead pole. But services into places would be underground.
Right,
But
yeah,
primary
from street,
services
from
are-
street in.
Right.
My only other thing that I seen here was that our engineer's estimate was $50,000, and that we're 16 over that. I mean, is that, what do we contribute that
I
to? or-
don't know that they did.
Like I said, that mobilization was backed out of that estimate, like they noted, the engineers noted that, so they were using those estimates as a line item in the overall project for the Riverview Crossroads. So you're probably looking at, I don't know, 5 to 6, 8, depending on how they bid the project.
I think their estimate
Mobilization.
was a bit of a swag. I mean, 8,000 an acre is pretty average out there. CS Carey, quite honestly, they're the people that do this work day in and day out, CS Carey.
And where are they out of?
I think, they're in this area, I think
I don't know.
KCK.
I've been talking, yeah,
They do a ton of work around, I mean, they've done all the work. I mean,
What will they do with the trees?
They will remove, they'll.
I mean, are they grinding them on site and then removing them? or-
The large stuff they're taking off, small stuff they're gonna mulch and leave on the ground for ground protection, erosion control basically through the winter. Because we know we won't go to grading operations until sometime early next year.
they're
So,
gonna go in first with like a shredder, shred the underbrush, so that they can get to the larger trees, and then they'll
Yeah, we'll just let
Then
them
they'll
drop
haul
shred
those-
in front of skid steer or something.
then they'll haul those off, yeah.
because just the project as a whole, so, I mean, part of the reason this happens is, so we gotta get this done, so the utilities, mainly water and power, those are the two biggies that becomes a problem. Same thing on Kansas Avenue, right? And gas to a little bit lesser extent, but gas. So this happens, then the bid is scheduled, KDOT bid will go out in January. So it's a January bid, and maybe it's a January, no, it goes out in January, bid letting February, with an anticipated start date of April, May on the project. So, I mean, it's pretty, again, the price, I think they're 50,000, I'm not, when I saw that, I'm not sure what they based that on.
Yeah.
I think they just built it into the whole bigger process, I don't, quite honestly, I don't know that. I mean, going from $8,000 for the same work of a similar project 5 years ago to $81.35 5 years later seems pretty reasonable.
Make a motion to authorize city manager to enter into a contract with CS Carey Incorporated for the 2020 Riverview Crossroads Clearing and Grubbing Project in the amount of $66,300.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded to authorize the city manager to enter into contract with CS Carey Inc. for the 2020 Riverview Crossing Clearing and Grubbing projects in the amount of $66,300. Would you clerk please call roll?
Malat,
Yes.
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites.
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Cahar.
Yes.
Advisory report, Mike?
I have a couple things, and I know that Zach probably has several more. I would just note two things. If you've been down on Wood End by Fastenal, you'll see that they have, Fastenal, part of their project, has paved the new trail project, at least a paving portion. There's still work to be done. There's some benches, landscaping, some other crosswalk, all that, but They did pave it last week, so that's about a half a mile extension on the trail. So they've got the paving, which is the biggest part of that, now done. So, and then speaking of projects, we do have our two projects, both the, what we call the town center connector, which will build sidewalks and dedicated bike lanes, and basically the sidewalk from here to the park, dedicated bike lanes along 9 and Blake Street. That comes up, I believe, on the 14th for review. I will say that after we met with them, we went from, they originally said that project was unaligned or incomplete. They said it was an incomplete project. We went back in, met with them, figured out what some of those issues were, resubmitted the information. It's now considered an aligned project, which is positive. And then we also have the project being the 98th Street from Kansas Avenue to the North City limits, also an aligned project. Part of the reason that's important that it's aligned, because generally the committee has said they're only going to consider projects that are aligned or highly aligned. So that at least gets us to the playing field. We still have to do our work, but that's a positive in that case. I also mentioned it because the last time I checked, there was only 2 or 3 comments on there.
Right.
So please go, comment. If you need the link, get a hold of me or Zach, we'll get it to you. We'll also send it to the chamber. It is important to have comments on there. It's not going to make you from a poor project to a great project, but it may be we're sitting here on the bubble, which oftentimes we are, but for a lot of demographic factors. That might be the one that helps us move it from doesn't get funded to get some funding. So please get
Zach,
out
can you
there.
resend those links?
I will do that.
And it's in your, the email that he sent for our agenda.
Yeah.
It's on there,
Yeah.
up on top. And I will tell you, as of today, there was an effort to make sure that not only all folks on 98th Street are going to be reaching out to their neighbors, so that they all are reaching out and to make a comment regarding that. Zach, thank you for helping my dad today
No problem.
get through that, and
We can do anything, we're happy to help.
appreciate
Yeah,
that.
we'll
So
make
there's
one
going to be
big
some,
push for it.
you'll see some comments.
I'll send it out to this group again in the morning and then get it out on our website and social media and all the stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a way to encourage it. Maybe there can just be something special in that hot shot. I know it says to voice your concern, but maybe to that we show that it's important. I mean, we need you to give your feedback on that. It makes a difference, and really, instead of hey, this isn't just a survey to make hey, 10 people like it, 12 didn't, or whatever. This may help us get to the point where we can make this project happen. So, sorry.
No.
That helped out a lot.
No, we need that. I mean, we need advocacy on this.
There's even.
That's all I have on,
Okay.
defer the rest, as they say in Congress, I will defer the rest of my time in the honorable Zach.
I'll make it quick, because I actually sent this information out to you guys last week, just to keep you guys updated on some of our fall activities that we've got planned. Send it to this group, send it to CPPS board, and we're gonna be talking some of these farther out projects with the CPPS board at our meeting this coming Wednesday. But to start off with the one that's coming up next, what we've kind of landed on for our Halloween concept is essentially, and we're limiting it to Edwardsville family only. You can sign up. What you'll receive is a kind of a goodie bag with donated candy. We're going to be soliciting businesses. We've already started. And we're going to have a drop-off site up on front of City Hall too, if people wanted to contribute. So businesses and different community groups will contribute to that candy. They'll get that. They'll get a kind of make a monster craft, and we're going to encourage them to kind of share that online with us, and we're going to make an interactive video for it. So that's something to look forward to. And then if they sign up for it, what we've worked out and what we're narrowing down the details, but we've got commitment from our public safety folks to actually do the drop-off. So we'll know all the total addresses a week ahead of time, and they know the streets better than we do, so we'll work with public safety to get a route going, and that way we'll alert the families generally what time frame that they can expect to visit. We've tried to structure it so it's safe for our folks doing it, it's safe for the families participating in it, really just gives them something to look forward to on that day. After that, we've got the citywide garage sale.
Oh, wait,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Don't forget the pumpkins.
Oh, yes, the pumpkins too. So we will be, so if you sign up for it, you'll also get a pumpkin, and you'll just come and pick it up. It's for free. Decorate it, either keep it, but what we're asking folks to do is to decorate it, and then kind of drop it back off, and we'll have some kind of like community pumpkin
Right.
display in one of our public spaces. So trying to, that way people can have something to go and look and see and take pictures of, and we're just really trying to fill those gaps as much as we can. And checked that we just started promoting it on Friday, so only a day or so after we let you guys know about it, we've got 80 addresses signed up for it already. So
Fantastic.
I imagine we'll probably top off around that no more than 140 addresses, and we're gonna split up the drop-offs between Friday evening and then all day on Halloween day on Saturday. So I think it'll be manageable, but we'll definitely know by the time.
Are you gonna have the school send something out to the grade school?
Yeah, they will. We contacted Kayla Williams over at the district today, and she's gonna get that information out to them.
So we could think maybe even about having some sort of a competition divided by age group to get people to bring the pumpkins back for the display if they wanted to. Either do a raffle or like one huge candy bar.
Right, yeah.
Something like that.
We could do something like that. We can, I mean, we've got enough time to move through that and figure something out.
Well, instead of
Yeah. So after that, we'll have the citywide garage sale, so that's November 7th, so that's the week before the bulky item pickup. We were gonna do the same as we did last year. We're not really, having a display ourselves or having a spot for it. All we're asking is folks to send us your address, and we'll create a map, and we'll put it out there, so that way, if people wanna hit all the addresses that are doing it, they've got one place to look at and can kind of do that route. After that, we've got, we're gonna do an e-waste drop-off. So we'll have, similar to what we did during the citywide cleanup, we'll get those palletized boxes, and instead of just having them out for that weekend, we'll set them out for a whole week, and we'll get more of them than we usually get, and just encourage people to come and drop off their electronic stuff. So again, try and fill that gap that we couldn't fill with
What
the,
week was that?
that'll be November 9th through the 13th.
They will be filled.
They will be filled, yes. And then the curbside multi-item pickup on the 14th, after that we discussed. The good thing about the timing for those, the November items, is that we've got a utility billing coming out at the end of October. So we'll have a special insert letting people know all the dates, all the details. So that timing worked out really well. So hopefully, you get your best amount of outreach done a couple weeks, a week or two before. It stays people fresh on their minds, so we're hoping that we get a lot of buy-in related to that.
They will all see it.
Yes, yeah, everybody who gets a utility bill in the city is gonna be able to know those dates. So that's over and above what we already do on our social media.
And you send something to the,
We're gonna be notifying
Separate.
the mobile home park. Now, the new manager knows about it, and we're just gonna be talking with them what the best way to get that information out to them specifically. We talked a little bit about our concept for possibly looking into overage stickers to provide for some folks. Mayors, so what the CPPS board is gonna be talking about, the two events that we've got left to kind of to noodle through. One of them would be kind of a newer event because the cemetery board's not really done anything in Veterans Day before, but that might be, that's a date out there on the calendar that we might be able to put something together. And then kind of thinking through concepts related to the mayor's tree lighting ceremony. So that way, again, we can nail down a concept, get it out so people know what to expect and when. Other than that, we've got our scavenger hunt that the Parks Department came up with a couple weeks ago, and that's actually very popular. People are looking forward to it. You'll see comments on the Facebook that, I was out for an hour and a half looking for it, I didn't find anything. And so that's good news because people are out and about in the community, in our public spaces, kind of just enjoying it while it's outside, and sometimes they find it, sometimes they don't. But they're out there and they're doing it. Again, that's a partnership that we did with the chamber. Find the item, bring it in, we'll change it for a $10 chamber bucks that they can use at Good Sense or Moon Marble or Outfield or wherever. And then we've got our photo contest going on too on our Facebook, and it's kind of set up as a bracket style. We had 16 photos get submitted, and every Tuesday and every Thursday at 4:30 they're posted, and whoever gets the most likes and hearts and all that, they move on to the bracket. People seem to be liking that a lot too. So trying to stay busy, giving folks something to do over the last couple weeks of the year before it gets too cold, but that's what's keeping us busy right now.
Thanks, Beck.
Mayor, just one thing I want to add, I just think about, so activities, it's more of an internal activity that I'll invite you all. So As you know, there's a pretty big push this year to ensure flu vaccinations are occurring. And so through the public health department, internally, we're gonna have, so every employee will have the option to get a flu vaccine here. And we've scheduled it so they can cover the shift. So they're gonna be here this Friday from 5:30 to 9 and then back from 1:30 to 3. And that's our breakover point for our public safety people. And so every employee that participates, we're doing the same thing with the chamber bucks. They'll have they'll get a chamber bucks to participate and then put into a larger drawing. We use our health credits that we get through NPR, so it's paid for out of that fund that we get those dollars back from NPR. We're really trying to encourage 100%, flu vaccination. If an employee decides they want to go to their Walgreens or their pharmacy or for their doctor and get it, they can still participate. So they just have to show proof of the vaccination so we can try to get everybody, the goal is to get everybody vaccinated for the flu this year. And if y'all are interested in it, I don't know if we'll put you in the drawing, but if you would like to get a flu vaccination, we will have that available this Friday. So you come as early as 5:30 in the morning, if that's what you want to do, and get that. If you're interested, let me know, and we'll add you. So I think it's going to be an important, you all heard all, the concern is that if you still have the COVID going on and the flu going on, if you can try, flu is one thing we know we have a vaccination for, you can reduce those risks, then hopefully you can reduce the potential of, significant adverse effects by having one or both. So that's something we're trying to do as it relates to our employees and wellness. So I'm going to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Chief Whittle? Nothing?
Let me just add that Mr. Matisse, Chief Matisse, is out tonight. He had a family emergency come up at the end of the day, so that's why he's not here tonight.
Thank you. Dusty?
I had a little map here that I printed off so this came from some of the pacer ratings that Ms. Taylor was asking about last time that we looked up and found some of that data. This is a map that was put together by BHC. It's an overlay on Google Earth, but it was created back in 2012 when they did some of those ratings with an engineer. BHC filed that data, made the map, and then Tammy updated it last year, and so this is the most recent update of it. I don't think anything's too alarming. I would agree with most of it from what I have seen. I think your 98th Street and your 102nd Street, in my personal opinion, are similar in some of their challenges and issues that they have going on. And I think some of those light blues down on Wood End and some of those we maybe need to keep considering preventative maintenance and things, so they're not dropping forward.
So basically, if you can see the map, what it looks like kind of a burnt orange are your 2s and 3s, and your yellows are your 4s and 5s. So that's kind of your critical areas in the sense of those are the ones you're getting into rebuild times. And things that are 6 and above, it's really you've got a good road there, but you need to make sure you maintain it to reduce your long-term maintenance. So you're spending money on the maintenance side and not on the reconstruction side, which again, I don't think there's anything up there that for the most part we didn't generally talk about in the past, but we wanted to pull this out. We're still working on the broader street plan that we talked about, but since that's been raised, it just gives you a quick visual. We do want to update it over time. You can see a few greens. Those are basically 100 streets which just got repaved last year. Obviously, Village South Parkway, which is a brand new street, segment there on 2nd Street at the end of Kansas Avenue. So those are all brand, those were just being done at the time this rating.
Would you email that to us?
Yeah, sure. The zeros and ones, there's only a few on those smaller roads that are just access to And those are something, actually, we've been kind of trying to address with our big public works department, James and I. Throwing some nicks and some holes and stuff, and those are things that I think that we can actually kind of address on a smaller scale like that, because they're low volume, low speed, lighter traffic. Those, you know, the little dead end roads there, I think we've already improved those a little bit, so I don't know how they would rate on the Pacer scale, but we've been working on them a little bit.
Did the UG help out on that? Because I've seen the UG dump truck.
They loaned us a dump truck.
Alone as a dump truck.
We've been using that.
Now, I will say, so we, and part of this, again, we'll get to, so we've used Pacer, and we'll go into what that means, but Pacer does a scale of 0 to 10. Then there's another rating called PCI. The UG about 2 years ago drove every street in the county with this contracted, it's a truck that has sensors on it. It drives by, and as it's driving, it assesses the road and attaches a PCI to that.
Yeah, they last saw it over on 98th Street.
Yeah, that's where it broke down and they stopped doing the survey.
Yeah. So we have that data as well. What we've looked at is preliminary. It uses a different rating scale, but it pretty much says the same.
And I think it's a little different, it's more like, I think like for filograph, like they would use when they're rating like contractors work.
Yeah,
So these are visually based,
right.
so there's maybe a little more understanding of the situation. I think these are probably a little better than that, but they were pretty representative.
Yeah.
Also, because I had a map in there a bit also, when we laid them beside each other, they looked, I mean, there wasn't a big surprise on them.
It wasn't like one road had a Pacer rating of 3, PCI had it as a 90.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we may be a 2, 3, and it may have had it at 40. Well, okay, so is a 40 equal to a 4? Not necessarily, right? I mean, they're in the same range. So anyways, we just wanted to throw this up so you can see it, and we'll send it out to you.
Mike, what about go back to that, the street off of 98 to the east that has been closed, who closed that?
We did that little stretch down there.
What would be the thing to just go ahead and abandon that street?
I think that's kind of the thinking we're talking
Do
about.
we need to do that, or do you do that?
Well, there's 2 parts to that. I mean, we can close it permanently, and then the question is, do you want to do away with that right of way? Right. So the right of way is still owned by the city, so you may or may not want to abandon the right. So one's a legal process. The other is just closing the road because it doesn't have really much value.
Yeah, it sounds like a beach or just close the road. And
I think, yeah, I mean.
Go through all that other crap.
So if you just close it, it just sits there and...
Yeah, I think for now, the best bet would be just to do a permanent closure, and I need to look into, get with our lawyer. I mean, I'm not sure if there's some legal, I mean, you certainly have to put up certain types of signs.
Well, it's a dangerous ingress egress.
It really is. It's a corner cutter, basically, right? Just, I mean, you come down to 98th Street access on it. There are no driveways or homes that have access onto that. There is one lot that has its own, well, it actually fronts K32 in that, but it's a vacant lot and it's owned by, basically it's owned by the landowners or us.
I just had noticed that was closed.
It just, because it's just a maintenance pain, so we'll move forward with that.
We did fill the other 2 positions. One started today and the other starts on the 26th.
Good. So that cemetery
We doubled our-
position, or that, not the cemetery position, but that position that was included with it.
Well, so these are the 2 public works positions, and then the existing public works employee we're going to continue that transition of him over to the cemetery grounds position.
He's effectively transitioned over there, but we'll formally, from a budget standpoint, transition over on the first. So that piece is full. We got all of our staff. Just in time for beautiful winter weather.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Lisa? Thank you.
October 14th is when the survey ends for the 98th Street to get your opinion road on there. So that is in 2 days. So need to make sure if anybody's going to get statements put on there or opinions or whatever, that it happens. I already got my flu shot. I walked into Walgreens one day and they flogged me and then stuck me in the arm. Yeah, got that done. Where are we at on the digital sign that we had discussed?
I have, for up north up there, so I have given,
Up
kind
north?
of, well, at Fourth and K32,
Oh,
to make sure we're talking about the right digital sign, yeah. Fourth and K. I have a, kind of a general proposal in to young signs up in,
Yeah.
up there, and they're kind of putting together a proposal for us, and so I gave them, basically I did street view so they could see both directions. The most likely, the plus and minus, right? So we have expanded right-of-way on the northwest corner, so the corner where the church is at, because just the way 4th Street was in the old days now. So that is really the only spot we have where the city controls the land. So that, I said, how would this work? Would it work if we just, I would say the one downside to that location is, I know the church has a sign farther back in their, on their lot, and I'm not sure how it might obscure that sign. But that's up there. As a matter of fact, I followed up earlier today with the person up there.
Cool. All right.
Told him I needed something ASAP because if we're gonna do it and we're gonna use CARES dollars, we need to move forward.
And all of the right-of-way acquisition that up north, that's all been,
All done, filed,
yeah, okay,
everything's done.
great. When are we gonna get the microphone at the podium straightened out?
So we are, as part of the CARES Act funding, one of the projects that we wanted to look at was upgrading the AV quality in here, specifically to make the live streaming and then the recording of it just a better experience. You can hear it better, you can see it better. So that is going to be included in that project.
Okay. The chamber golf, there was a golf tournament last Tuesday?
Yes, sir.
Tuesday. The Edwardsville Bonner Chamber, and I think there was 22 teams in that, so it was a good turnout, great day, a lot of folks. There were 3 people in this room that played on a team, and it was a good time.
Which, by the way, placed third.
Oh,
Actually,
where's my trophy?
I just found out today, tied for, technically there was 3 scores, second, third, and fourth all had the same score.
Somebody cheated.
The number 1 team.
Golf, isn't it?
You know, they're golf. Mr. Stein, the number 1 team shot 20 under.
And what were we?
8.
Wow. So we were,
In other words,
we did pretty good.
The other team shot 16 birdies and 2 eagles.
Well, we just didn't rank the right shot.
I'm not going to say that the team was highly stacked with semi-pro players.
You know what, it was fun though.
It was.
And there was a lot of good participation, and had a good time.
So it was a good outing for, one of the reasons the chamber, does that particular event. And of course, it was important this year with everything going on. I think they did an exceptional job, and if you see Paul Barrett, thank him, because he really headed that up, to make sure that the players were safe. So they brought lunch, so the lunch was at your cart, all the stuff was at your cart. One person went in and signed you up. If you were inside, wore a mask. They did a really good job of doing everything that could be done to maintain the safety of the players and the staff and everything. They did an excellent job. The second part is the money that they make from that. It's 10% or 15 to 10%.
10%, yeah.
Goes directly to scholarships for the school. So that's its primary purpose, is to support kids in the Bonner Edwardsville school. So
So just think,
It's more than just going out for a game of.
how much, if you would have just made that one putt, that would have dropped his one stroke, and we would have had second on our own.
Literally hit around the tree.
I don't blame Dave.
I'm just saying how important every stroke was.
I'll make sure that's reflected in the minutes.
No, but it was a good event, and it was good for Edwardsville and Bonner also. On the, no, I'm gonna leave, I'll wait until we come back with the housing study information. That's all I have.
So, question, the second day of the Edwardsville COVID testing, how many, I don't know if you reported that.
I think there was 30 the second day. Yeah.
There were between 20 and 30, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it was,
I think there was I think it was, because I think it was a total of 75 or 79.
I want to say it was a total 75, 50 on the first day and 25 on the second
Yeah,
day.
it
But
was
we could get
49
those
the first, I
breakdowns.
know that, so.
Gotcha.
And I have asked him, and I haven't gotten, unless I've missed it, but for broader details, like, so how many people came, you know, by gender, by residency,
We'll
by,
get that breakdown.
et cetera, so.
And remind me again how that was advertised. Was it on Facebook, email?
Facebook, email, website, let's see what else. We had, we had a paper component. I just can't remember how we distributed it.
So it goes back to the sign on the highway. I just think without a newspaper, without timely information,
Absolutely.
would be so important.
So the
With the
intent.
sign,
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
for the residents, there's so many things that, for timeliness, can't be sent in the utility bill. And that's a perfect example.
So what we're
Filling
looking.
out a survey, how many people we get filling out these surveys? The numbers are low. My question is, are they getting this information? Anyway, if we
So,
could get
yeah.
information on that sign, it would be,
So with the CARES Act dollars, so we originally
Right.
looked at 2 portable signs, so then the dollars we put in there. And so what we're looking at this point is to be able to have the permanent sign plus 1 portable sign. So mix, which we can, we can change these things up, right? So that's what we're looking at. We know that the fixed base sign will be more expensive than the portable sign. And quite honestly, the original phase of it may be the sign, right? And
Right.
come back and, so to speak, dress it up, right? Make sure it has a proper, whether it's brick or whatever around it, something to dress up.
I just think
the
it's
sign.
important. There's so many things that have gone on just in the last couple of years that I don't know if people get this information.
Right.
So, who does handle the Facebook updates,
That'd be me.
website?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's going out to people somehow.
Yeah. I think, we've got metrics, just from a social media perspective, we've done pretty admirable as far as the reach that we can get on that. Now, obviously, there's limits to it, but
Sure.
But-
Well, you have a lot on your plate, and all that extra I know is helping, so thank you for
no
that.
problem.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Garrett?
I'm gonna thank Mike and Dustin Baker for the presentation this evening on the possibilities of the town center getting that started. I would really like to see that project start kind of moving along. I think financially we can handle it according to what Mike has said, so I do think that would be a terrific asset for the city. The other thing I'd like to see us move along with the 4th Street improvements from here all the way up to 32 Highway, if we could start trying to get that going. Maybe that could speed railroad up a little bit on the silent crossing issue. Speaking of the railroad crossing, with the whistle that went through here the other morning for however long it was, and the train that was coming through here tonight that held a lot of people up, I think that's a public safety issue. And I think it would be a good idea for maybe us to draft a letter as a council and a mayor possibly, and send to the UP with our concerns over that. I think back in the old days, I think they used to break those trains after so many minutes. I might be wrong on that, but it seemed to me like that they used to have to break, or were required to break them to open up the crossing. So I'd kind of like to see maybe a letter put together, kind of like we did with the UG, and see if that could, I'm just out of breath, I'm not nervous, it's hot, and I hate these things. But that's kind of where I want to be on that. And then you caught the electronic sign already, I had that mentioned on here, so. Basically, that's all I've got for tonight, so thank you.
I will tell you on the train, because I have reached out without much success, so maybe that will help. We've had 2 occasions in probably the last 2 to 3 weeks where we've had a train set across all 3 crossings for an hour or more.
That is unacceptable.
And in both of those cases, we had medical emergency auto accidents on the 832 in which our department had to basically go down, hit the highway back around. That is completely unacceptable, totally unacceptable. And we've not had that problem. I mean, you get it occasionally, but it has been in the last 2 months, I would say, more and more times when we're having slow trains stop, and when we call them, it's like, well, we're serving a customer.
Carolyn just had one tonight.
And that's wonderful, they're serving a customer, but serving a customer and closing all 3 crossings is unacceptable.
That's really why I brought that up, Carmen. I was stuck at that one tonight too. It's just ridiculous. The other thing that they do is they block 32 highway up there
Right.
when they're coming in and out of Boozy concrete. And they can block that for 45 minutes to an hour, and there's traffic backed up clear past 7 Highway in the bottom, and clear almost to my house in Edwardsville, waiting for those guys to move those cars around. And I don't think the railroad, as powerful as they are, I don't think they should be able to get away with that. Maybe we could contact the city managers at Edwardsville and Modern to get together and see if we could get that presented to the railroad by the 2 cities and see if that could make any kind of a difference. I mean, I think it's like the term fight in City Hall, but I think that you could still at least make it known that we're trying to make an effort for that. And the train whistles are getting more and more ridiculous back in the city here. So if you live near those tracks, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I will just for follow-up, I have had discussions with both the engineer and no pun intended there, and with the county engineer on some project engineer, county engineer on those improvements. Have suggested even that for 4th Street, the city would take the lead on getting it done, with getting the road part, because most of it's us anyways, the road, the meetings, all that. I mean, they would reimburse us instead of us reimbursing them in those processes. I think they're open to that, but I think at this point, they're looking to do the same thing through all the crossings. Go ahead and make all the public improvements that have to be made anyways, and then push the railroad board to say, okay, we've done everything. Because none of the crossings are going to require new gates or modification of gates, so which is the big one. It does require extension of pads at 4th Street and at Swingster to service crosswalks. Otherwise, it's pretty much the improvements are the ones that have to be done by the entity, the UG, but it's within the railroad right of way. And so I think we're going to take a different approach to get that done. Because it shouldn't have taken this long.
You know, to me, just even as big as Union Pacific Railroad is, you know, there still should be some limits to what they can put on the public. To me, this is beyond any limits that they should be able to expose us to. I mean, it's just a complete total nuisance for them to do that. And it could be a life-threatening situation too. So that's where I stand on that. And I appreciate all of you listening to me with my rant on this, but it's definitely something that's rantable as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, Carolyn?
Mike, who are the trains accountable to? Who do they answer to?
Ultimately, I would say they probably are accountable to the Federal Railroad Administration. That is the overseeing entity for the railroad industry.
Could we make sure if we get a letter typed up that we send it to that entity as well? I feel like even above a nuisance, if we're having our fire and police and ambulances watched for hours at a time. I mean, this is beyond just, you know, making somebody late. That's a really big deal.
Well, that's what I would say, you know, what we may ask Bonner if they wouldn't mind joining in that letter to have both cities.
And they may have the same problem down on their crossing, I don't know.
Right, that's what I mean.
What I've been
Ask
told,
them.
so they come down and what they're doing is they're putting cars onto the side rails in the industrial park like for the lumber company down there. But,
Off K-32.
well, on the ones that go on through Edwardsville. But so apparently, their trains are getting longer. So one of the questions I've requested, I've gotten no response. How many trains are coming through today? How long are the trains? You know, some of these kind of questions. But what's happening is the trains are getting longer. The cars that they need to take off to put down in the spur is maybe at the front of the train. So they disconnect it, pull the train forward, back it up, and leave all the rest of the cars parked out on the rail line across all three crossings. That's effectively what they're doing. I know Chief may want to speak of it. He's had several discussions with the folks, the engineers or whoever on the trains, and the answer is always, well, we just have a long train and we're serving a customer effectively.
Well, I had a dealing with this years ago when I was at the police department. And I was told by an engineer, the fine is not enough that it warrants them doing something differently. They would rather just pay the fine because it's minimal. I can't remember the amount, but versus doing any changing, disconnecting a train, doing all those things. Hey, fine us if that's what you guys would like to do. That's what I was told.
That's terrible. I understood before as well that there was a limit to how long they
That's
could
right.
block intersections. And if the fine's not enough, seriously, if people are having medical issues, they might be looking at a lawsuit. If that's stopping them from getting
I
that.
was told in no less than about 4 words that we have no authority over them blocking all of the intersections and all the rail crossings in Edwardsville. You know,
Well, I mean,
the
somebody
burden
knows
is
that
on the
answer.
city.
We don't.
It's gonna be the same as Mr. Sykes said. Sykes, you know, they wanted to report no mail to check. They don't care about anything, because we've asked and asked and asked. If you're gonna be sitting here, let us know, because it does us no good if we can't see down at the railroad crossing to have to come up, then go down Blake, shoot down 9th, go over to Wood End, now try to shoot back up 435 and come back on K32. And usually because we're getting to these calls, and this last one was an automobile accident at the off-bound ramp of 435 that had the traffic backed up there that we had to try to get to fight getting into it. And this is not the only time, you know, this has been perpetuated. I'd say about the last 2 years, it's getting worse and worse, but here in the last 60, 90 days, I mean, it is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at night. I don't know how many industries are serving over there, but I mean, it's 2 or 3 times a week now that we've lost all 4 rail crossings. And like I said, you know, we don't get notified until there's a call that occurs. And what bothers me is all 3 of our nursing homes are south of the train tracks. And if we were to have a fire or a big incident in there, and they're parked across all 3 rail yards, or all 3 rail crossings, you know, now I'm diverting resources. 10 more, you know, it's not 10 minutes, but now I gotta get on the radio and tell them, oh, by the way, now you have to cut in and this and that and everything else, because all the rail crossings are closed. And like I said, I call the ops center when they're doing it to try to figure out how long. I can sit on hold for 20 or 30 minutes and get told, I just have to deal with it. You know, if there's a problem, go talk to the engineer, take the cops, write a citation. They're not gonna worry about it because they are protected to a degree by the Federal Rail Administration, kind of like the FAA. They get to do whatever they want, however they want, and there's no consequence to it. And they're gonna tell us that if we don't like it, then we need to look at moving the city. I mean, it's almost as bad as the old Corps of Engineers.
I think at that point then, so we've tried to communicate,
Okay.
we might need to get an attorney involved or the news. Because at least PR would be terrible for them, saying, hey, you care more about, you'll write a check just to, who cares about the lives that are adjusted. I mean, people need to know if that's the way that our fire chief's been treated and communicated with, that we don't care, too bad, deal with it. That's completely unacceptable.
Well, I think first step is, I think we do need to step up beyond, kind of the local governmental affairs person and step it up within both the Union Pacific and the FRA. I think that's the next step.
Let us
And
know if you
potentially-
wouldn't mind
and
getting
potentially,
the response.
Political in a sense, I'm not sure who sets on transportation committee or whatever. So, I mean, that's good, like the U.S. Transportation Committee or something.
Okay.
You're kind of stepping it up, that may be too far to go in first step, but I think definitely we want to step it up in the Union Pacific and with the federal railroad.
Isn't Sharice Davids on the transportation committee?
Yep.
So she should be copied on all
I can do
communication.
that. Yeah, I wasn't sure, I thought somebody could.
To Ron a few times too.
And I'll talk to them.
And I don't know, it doesn't, I mean, it's an election year, but who cares? We need to have something done. And I don't think.
Something is being done.
I
Yeah.
hope so.
So
All right,
it might
you
help
got it.
you with
I'd like
some
to
letters and let us
communicate
know
mine. I'd like somebody to let me know about it.
if we hear back, at the next meeting,
Yes.
if you've heard anything.
We'll have a report back during the staff.
Do you know if the court has, given anyone the opportunity for litter pickup yet, or if that's been utilized?
Well, I don't know. I know that they have had at least one person that they sentenced to community service, but I don't know more about it.
Okay, if we get an update for that next meeting, that'd be great. Everyone's still on. The COVID test results from Edwardsville, I believe you said we got about 75, and they were all
They were all
negative.
negative, yes.
Do you know if those were counted in the QLT numbers, or could we
Yes,
confirm
they
them?
would be. So depending on their place of residence is where, so they report, so it goes to, I asked this question, so, because I was like, are these numbers getting included, whether it's here or other testing, how are you picking them up if they're tested at Walmart or wherever, right? So all of that is required to be submitted to KDHE, and basically, I guess it gets the city code or whatever, city county code, and then that is reported back to the county. So there's a bit of a delay, a couple of days delay from the time, take a test, and 24 hours later, they give us a result. Those results are sent to KDHE, however long it takes them to put it up on their site, and then the various public health departments across the state can go download that information on a daily basis, which is going to take years. So yes, they work.
Great, I just wanted to make sure that was included.
Yes.
And the last thing I have is, I know because of COVID, a lot of our, or all maybe of the fundraising for Graham the Cruiser was canceled, the motorcycle rides and things like that. Is there anything that we can do, without throwing it all on the fire chief, to coordinate another fundraising event to help the families in the community? Chief, I don't mean to put a lot on you, I'm willing to help
Well,
anyway,
when we had to cancel, that was one item we looked at. We've reached out to a couple of our community partners, we're waiting to hear back about how we're gonna try to approach it this year. We have confirmed right now with most of our gas station convenience stores, Dollar Generals, that instead of the typical boot being out for about 2 or 3 weeks before Christmas, we're gonna actually let us place before the start of the Thanksgiving holiday and go out that route. And then what we're gonna try to do, we're waiting to hear back from Dollar General, Regional is the main player. They've been passing out a donation box in there, and it's always just been through Dollar General for just toys. We're requesting that allows toys and food items as well, and then try to decipher from there. Now, I know that there have been a couple other agencies that have kind of stepped up. One, I don't want to speak because it's not locked in yet, but one of our local, community partners that is on K32 in a building that is predominantly open Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, has talked about trying to do some sort of contribution sales, 5 to 10% of that. So we're still trying to find other ways to accommodate the need that's going to be in this community, but it's unfortunately going to be on a scaled back version of what we're looking at right now.
I appreciate all you're doing on that. I know this is a huge effort.
We'll have some discussions through that, that's thing coming, we'll also talk about like our staff meetings.
Yeah.
What ideas we can.
And if there's any sort of an event or fundraiser, something a little bit different that could help out with that, I would be more than willing to help plan or execute that. If we do a boot fundraiser for it, can we put a link to that online so people can donate through Venmo or PayPal or something as well?
Yep.
That's all I have for today.
Chuck?
It was good to hear that we were able to borrow the dump truck from KCK. I don't know if I should consider that a good first step in some sharing of our county monies that go into Seventh and but good. I'm glad they're.
We had other discussions about other equipment and things too, and there is some, I think they have some interest in helping out where they can, so hopefully that's a
Great.
positive.
Dusty, thank you very much. I appreciate your work on that. Construction waste. I keep hearing construction waste can't be collected. What's so unique, or why can't construction waste be collected on Big Trash Day? Or it seems like it's this entity in and of itself that nobody can touch.
Personally, from my perspective, that's the responsibility of the contractor, not the city.
I think partly is a construction waste created by a private firm,
Right.
and they're supposed to take care of it. I think where the challenge gets in is, I go do a home improvement, and I have to go buy a piece of sheet rock to fix some stupid hole that I made in the garage because I doing something stupid. And then I got a half a piece of sheet rock left, and I throw it out and I know it's construction waste. I think that's
That's what I'm thinking.
I think if that's what we're talking about.
I agree with you, and I also am thinking of that.
Well, that's for the home remodeler. You're talking about the home remodeler. and
The
dealing with
do-it-yourselfer guy, they
Yeah.
like to have sheetrock, a bunch of ends of 2x4s and things like that.
And decide whose it is.
So,
I don't know, let us follow up, I don't know, I understand the question.
That must be why there was 17 bags under I-70 on 98th
there
Street.
you go.
That, well,
Now we know where
I'll
to
leave
take
it
it.
at that. Sat there for quite some time, not in our city. And I called, and our city ended up picking it up. And thank you guys for that. I kind of wish you wouldn't have. It's odd for me because I'm always want trash picked up. But 17 bags of sheetrock, bagged sheetrock dumped under there. I would like for our cameras to be used on that area. That's what I thought we got them for.
Well, actually, it would be KCK's responsibility technically.
Well, you would have seen a car go by.
You don't wanna put a camera in their city.
Nope, I don't think, I don't know if we want to do that. But anyway, I agree with you. Maybe we can do it in our city with the long view camera. So,
Well, I can talk about the other bridge just south of there in our city that had trash dumped out there a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
so the
Right, we can.
field south of the fire station, we've been in talks with the trailer park about that. What's the update on that?
I'm not sure about the talks, the BHC was, they were hired to do the surveying, and they're finishing up that part of the survey.
Okay.
So they surveyed, they basically did 3 components. One was tying down some sewer through the whole part. And 2 was to get legal descriptions for 3rd Street and Beach Street, I think it is. And then the third part was that, and I spoke to the surveyor probably a week ago, I just need to follow up on that. So
Is the, all the utilities we're talking about reroute, or at least rerouting and redoing through our property, does that also serve the trailer park?
It comes, part of it may, but just barely across Beach Street. There's a little question. It goes across Beach Street to the north, and then there's another line that comes off of 4th Street and goes west and then makes a diagonal. We don't think those two connect, and so that, we just gotta figure out, make sure what's there. I don't believe so. So we consider the line that comes down 4th Street, turns west into the mobile home park, goes through the middle of the mobile home park, and initially went to the old lagoon system, the sewer plant, which was then taken out and ties in, but that's a city line. The lines inside the park, because that's all private, are not our lines. So we take the position that the main line is ours. All the feeder lines from wherever else are private sewer lines and not city.
But to our knowledge, they're not connected.
I don't believe they are. So it mainly just if it picks up anything, it's picking up the office, the mobile home park office, and maybe 1 or 2 trailers to the north of that. That's not all it could pick up.
But we're kind of waiting on the surveys and all that to be completed before we can really have solid discussions.
So we can have one discussion about all the pieces.
Okay, all right. That's all I have.
Well, I have nothing further to add, so we are adjourned.